Jake Morrison stood in the center of the largest room he had ever seen. The walls stretched up so high that he could barely see the ceiling. Strange lights floated in the air, casting blue and purple shadows across the floor. Around him, creatures from different worlds sat in massive chairs that looked like thrones. The human captain wore his best uniform, but he still felt small. His brown hair was cut short in military style, and his green eyes stayed calm, even though his heart was beating fast. 6 months ago, humans had no idea that aliens existed. Now Jake was standing in front of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Lisa Hayes stood beside him. She was the best diplomat Earth had, with long blonde hair tied back and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She had spent weeks learning about alien customs, but this meeting was still a mystery. The message had been simple. The Vraktar wanted to talk to humans. Nobody knew why that was important until they learned who the Vraktar were. The Vraktar were 8 feet tall and covered in dark armor that seemed to grow from their skin. Their faces looked like a cross between a wolf and a dragon, with glowing yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth. Long claws extended from their hands, and patterns of light moved across their armor like lightning. Other species called them the galaxy's perfect killers. Warlord Thekvor was the largest Vraktar Jake had ever seen. His armor was black with silver markings, and scars covered the parts of his face that showed. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Human Jake Morrison," Thekvor said, "your species confuses us." The other aliens in the room shifted nervously. The Zeph-Hai looked like walking crystals that rang like bells when they moved. The Krell were insect-like creatures with too many arms and eyes that glowed red. The Luminar appeared as balls of pure energy floating in metal suits. All of them seemed afraid of the Vraktar. "How do we confuse you?" Jake asked. He kept his voice steady, though every instinct told him to run. "For 3,000 years, no species has earned our respect," Thekvor replied. "We have fought beside armies that turned and ran when the battle grew hard. We have seen civilizations surrender rather than face death. We stopped trusting other species because they all chose safety over honor." Lisa stepped forward. "But something changed?" "The attack on this station changed everything," said another Vraktar warrior named Kreldash. His armor was red with gold stripes. "When the Void Pirates came, we expected the usual response. We thought all species would evacuate and leave us to fight alone." Jake remembered that day. The Void Pirates had come out of nowhere. Their black ships tearing holes in the station's shields. Alarms had screamed through every corridor. Most aliens had indeed run for the escape pods. "Your people did something different," Thekvor continued. "Instead of running away from danger, you ran toward it. Captain Morrison, you and 12 humans stayed behind to fight beside us." "It was our duty," Jake said simply. "Duty." Thekvor repeated the word like he was tasting it. "When Warrior Grekmore fell with a hole burned through his chest, your medic Katie Sullivan treated his wounds. She knelt beside a dying Vraktar warrior and saved his life. When our weapons overheated, your engineer Rick Thompson fixed them under enemy fire," Kreldash added. He laughed while plasma bolts flew over his head. "When we needed to destroy the pirate command ship, your demolitions expert Danny Rodriguez volunteered for a suicide mission," Thekvor said. "He smiled when we told him he probably would not survive." Lisa looked surprised. "They never mentioned how dangerous it was in their reports." "Because humans do not think it was strange," Thekvor explained. "When we asked Danny Rodriguez why, he volunteered. He said someone had to do it, so it might as well be him. When we asked Katie Sullivan why she treated our wounded, she said people were hurt, and she was a medic. When we asked Rick Thompson why he risked his life fixing weapons, he said the job needed doing." The room fell silent. The other alien species watched with wide eyes or glowing sensors, depending on how they saw the world. "No species has ever treated us as equals," Thekvor said. "They fear us or try to use us, but they do not respect us. Your humans are different. You did not see monsters when you looked at us. You saw allies." "What do you want from us?" Jake asked. Thekvor stood up from his throne. His full height was impressive and his claws caught the strange light. "We want to fight beside you again. The galaxy faces threats that require both human courage and Vraktar strength. Lisa blinked in surprise. You want an alliance? More than that, Kreldash said. We want to learn from each other. Your species has something we lost long ago. You remember what it means to face death without fear. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day, Jake said. Fear keeps you alive, but it cannot rule your life. Yes, Thekfor growled, with what might have been approval. Your death world made you strong in ways we had forgotten. Our homeworld was also harsh, but we became civilized. We forgot the joy of righteous battle. An alarm suddenly rang through the station. The lights changed from blue to red, and a voice spoke in the common galactic language. Unknown ships approaching. All citizens report to safe areas immediately. The other aliens began moving toward the exits, but Jake noticed the Vraktar were not afraid. Instead, they looked excited. Their armor patterns glowed brighter, and they bared their teeth in what Jake realized were smiles. Perfect timing, Thekfor said. Captain Morrison, would you like to show the galaxy why the deadliest species in space trusts Earth's Deathworlders? Jake grinned and checked his sidearm. Lead the way, Warlord. As they headed toward the battle, Lisa shook her head in amazement. In 6 months, humanity had gone from discovering aliens existed to becoming best friends with the galaxy's most feared predators. She had a feeling this was just the beginning. 3 weeks after the meeting at the Galactic Council, Jake Morrison found himself strapped into a seat that was not made for humans. The Vraktar ship was built for 8-foot-tall warriors, so everything was too big. His boots barely touched the floor, and he had to crane his neck to see out the windows. The ship was called Blood of Stars, and it lived up to its name. The walls were dark metal covered in red markings that seemed to glow with their own light. Weapon systems lined every corridor, and the air smelled like metal and something Jake could not identify. Nervous human? Asked Kreldash, the red-armored Vraktar warrior sitting across from him. Just wondering if we'll fit through the doors when we need to run, Jake replied with a grin. The Vraktar made a sound that might have been laughter. Your species is strange. Most aliens ask about weapons or armor. You joke about running away. Danny Rodriguez looked up from the explosive device he was cleaning. The demolitions expert had black hair and brown eyes that always seemed to be planning something dangerous. Running away is for when the real fun starts, he said. Katie Sullivan, the team medic, shook her head at Danny's comment. She had red hair pulled back in a ponytail and green eyes that missed nothing when it came to injuries. Please try not to blow us up before we reach the target, she said. Where's the fun in that? Danny asked. Rick Thompson was lying on his back under a control panel, his legs sticking out as he worked on the ship's systems. The engineer had sandy brown hair and was always fixing something. The gravity compensator is making weird noises, he called out. Probably nothing to worry about. Famous last words, Katie muttered. Warlord Thekfor entered the room, his massive frame filling the doorway. His black and silver armor caught the red light, making him look even more threatening than usual. We are approaching the Maelstrom sector, he announced. Jake had read about the Maelstrom sector in the briefing files. It was a region of space where the laws of physics went crazy. Ships that entered sometimes came out changed, and some never came out at all. The ancient enemy they were hunting, called the Devourer Fleet, was hiding somewhere inside. Sensors are picking up strange readings, reported Grekmore, the Vraktar warrior who had been wounded in the pirate attack. Katie had saved his life, and now he followed her around like a grateful puppy, if puppies were 8 feet tall and covered in armor. Define strange, Rick said, sliding out from under the control panel. Time flows differently in some areas. Gravity points in wrong directions. Space itself seems to bend, Grekmore explained. Sounds like Tuesday back home, Danny said cheerfully. The ship suddenly shook and the lights flickered. Through the windows, Jake could see that space looked wrong. Stars were moving in spirals, and some areas were completely black while others blazed with impossible colors. Entering the Maelstrom now, announced the ship's pilot. The shaking got worse. Jake felt his stomach turn as gravity seemed to shift directions. One moment he was pressed down into his seat, the next he was floating toward the ceiling. The Vraktar. Warriors around him looked uncomfortable for the first time since Jake had met them. "This is not natural," Thekvor growled, gripping his armrests so hard his claws dug into the metal. "No kidding," Rick said, but he sounded excited instead of scared. "The quantum field is fluctuating in patterns I've never seen. It's like space is alive." An alarm started blaring. The pilot's voice came over the communication system, but it sounded distorted. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Time distortion field. Detected. Gravity well forming inside the ship." Katie grabbed her medical kit and headed for the door. "Casualties on Deck 7, she said. "Wait," Kreldash called out. "The gravity field makes that section dangerous. We should wait for it to stabilize. People are hurt now." Katie replied and kept walking. Jake followed her, along with the rest of his team. The Vraktar warriors looked at each other uncertainly before following as well. Deck 7 was a nightmare. The ceiling had become the floor, in some places, while other areas had no gravity at all. Water from broken pipes was flowing upward in impossible streams. Several Vraktar warriors were floating helplessly in the middle of the room, their heavy armor making them unable to move in zero gravity. "This is insane," Grekmore said, his voice tight with something Jake had never heard from a Vraktar before, or fear. "This is Tuesday," Danny said again, pulling out a small explosive device. "Rick, can you map the gravity fields?" "Already on it," Rick replied, holding up a scanner that was beeping wildly. "The fields are shifting every 30 seconds in a pattern. If we time it right, we can use the changes to reach the wounded." Katie was already moving, using the walls and floating debris to navigate toward an injured Vraktar warrior. "Broken, arm and possible internal bleeding," she called out after examining him. "How are you staying calm?" asked Thekvor, watching as the humans moved through the chaos like it was normal. "Earth tried to kill us every day for millions of years," Jake explained, pulling himself along a pipe that was somehow growing hot and cold at the same time. "Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, ice ages. We learned to adapt or die." Danny placed his explosive charges at specific points around the room. "Fire in the hole," he yelled cheerfully. The controlled explosions created a path through the shifting gravity fields. The charges went off in sequence, each one timed perfectly, to use the changing physics to their advantage. "Impossible," whispered Kreldash. "He is using the chaos as a tool." Rick was rerouting power through circuits that should not have worked, but somehow did. "The trick is not to fight the weird physics," he explained. "You have to dance with them." Within an hour, they had rescued all the wounded and repaired the worst damage. The Vraktar warriors watched in amazement as the humans turned a disaster into a manageable problem. "Your species is truly mad," Thekvor said, but there was respect in his voice. "Thank you," Jake replied, taking it as a compliment. The ship's pilot announced that they had found the Devourer fleet's trail, but Jake noticed that the Vraktar looked different now. They had seen humans face the impossible and laugh about it. For the first time, the galaxy's deadliest warriors were beginning to understand what made humans special. "Next stop, ancient killer robots," Danny said, grinning as he cleaned his tools. "This day just keeps getting better." The Devourer fleet hung in space like a nightmare made real. Hundreds of black ships stretched across the void, each one the size of a small moon. Their surfaces were smooth and dark, reflecting no light. Strange energy patterns flowed between them like veins carrying poison. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Blood of Stars, watching the enemy through the main viewer. The human captain had seen many frightening things in his life, but nothing like this. The ship seemed to absorb, light itself, creating patches of absolute darkness in space. "How old are these things?" Katie Sullivan asked, her medical scanner picking up readings that made no sense. "The galactic records say they first appeared 12 million years ago," Thekvor replied. His deep voice carried a note Jake had never heard before: uncertainty. Danny Rodriguez was studying his explosive readings with a frown. "These ships are not just metal and circuits," he said. "There's something else inside them. Something that feels alive." Rick Thompson looked up from his instruments, his face pale. The energy readings are impossible. These ships are not just using power, they're creating it from nothing. That breaks every law of physics I know. The laws of physics mean nothing. To the Devourers, said Gregmore. They consume entire star systems. Billions of people disappear and the ships grow stronger. Lisa Hayes had joined them from the diplomatic ship that followed behind. The blonde commander was studying ancient records on a portable computer. I've been reading the historical files, she said. The pattern is always the same. The Devourers appear, entire civilizations vanish, and the fleet moves on. What do they want? Jake asked. That's what we came here to find out, Thekvor said. A small scout ship detached from the Vraktar fleet and moved toward the enemy. Jake watched it approach the nearest Devourer vessel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the scout ship simply stopped moving. Contact lost, reported the communications officer. What happened to it? Katie asked. Before anyone could answer, they got their reply. The scout ship began to dissolve. Its hull turned to dust that flowed toward the Devourer ship like water running downhill. Within minutes, there was nothing left. They ate it, Danny said quietly. Not ate, Lisa corrected, looking at her readings. Absorbed. Every atom. Every piece of energy. But that's not the strangest part. She turned her computer screen so the others could see. I'm reading massive energy spikes from the Devourer ship right after it absorbed our scout. But the energy is not coming from the ship's metal or fuel. Then where is it coming from? Rick asked. The crew, Lisa said. The 3 Vraktar warriors on that scout ship were terrified in their final moments. The Devourer ship absorbed that fear and turned it into power. The bridge fell silent. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as the truth became clear. They feed on fear, he said. That explains everything. Thekvor growled. Every species they encounter provides them with more energy. The more afraid their victims are, the stronger the Devourers become. Lisa was typing rapidly on her computer, cross-referencing data from different sources. Look at this, she said, pointing to a star map. 12 million years of conquest, but there are gaps. Entire regions of space. The Devourers avoided completely. Jake studied the map. What was in those regions? Deathworlds, Lisa replied. Planets so dangerous that only the toughest species could survive on them. But here's the interesting part. The Devourers never attacked those species, even when they became spacefaring civilizations. Why would ancient killing machines avoid Deathworld species? Katie asked. Rick was running calculations on his scanner. Because Deathworld species don't generate the right kind of energy, he said excitedly. We don't respond to mortal danger with pure fear. We respond with excitement, curiosity, and determination. The adrenaline rush, Danny added with a grin. Back on Earth, when normal people see a hurricane coming, they run away scared. But storm chasers drive toward it because they think it's cool. Thekvor's eyes widened as understanding dawned. When humans faced the Void Pirates, you were not afraid. You were eager for battle. You enjoyed the challenge. And when we entered the Maelstrom sector, you Vraktar showed fear for the first time, Jake realized. But we treated it like a puzzle to solve. Kreldash stepped forward, his red armor glowing brighter. My ancestors spoke of the old days when we lived on our homeworld. They called it the Age of Joy, when every day brought new dangers to overcome. We were happy then. What changed? Lisa asked. We became civilized, Thekvor said sadly. We built safe cities, predictable lives. We forgot that danger could be exciting instead of terrifying. We became like every other species, afraid to die. A new alarm sounded on the bridge. The Devourer fleet was moving, turning toward a nearby star system where 3 billion aliens lived in peace. They're going to feed, Gregmore said. Jake watched the massive ships begin their approach toward the populated worlds. Somewhere on those planets, people were starting to panic as their sensors detected the approaching darkness. That panic would feed the Devourers, making them stronger for the next attack. We have to stop them, Katie said. How? Thekvor asked. Our weapons are useless against ships that absorb energy. Our tactics mean nothing against enemies that grow stronger when we show fear. Jake looked around the bridge at his team and their Vraktar allies. An idea was forming in his mind, something so crazy it might actually work. We don't fight them with fear, he said slowly. We fight them with joy. Danny's eyes lit up. You mean we make this fun instead of scary? The Devourers have never faced an enemy that was happy to see them, Rick added, catching on to Jake's thinking. Thekfor bared his teeth in what was becoming a familiar smile. A battle where we remember the joy our ancestors felt when facing worthy enemies. It's insane, Lisa said. It's Tuesday, Danny replied cheerfully. Jake turned to face the approaching Devourer fleet. For 12 million years they had fed on the fear of their victims. But they had never encountered Deathworlders who treated mortal peril as entertainment. Send a message to all ships, Jake ordered. Tell them we're not running away from the deadliest fleet in galaxy history. We're running toward it, and we're going to have the time of our lives. The space above planet Kepler 442b looked like the end of the world. The Devourer fleet had surrounded the blue and green world, their black ships blocking out the stars. 3 billion people lived on that planet, and their terror was feeding. The ancient machines like fuel poured on a fire. Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the combined galactic fleet, watching the horror unfold on the main screens. Ships from a dozen different species had come to help, but their crews were paralyzed by fear. The Zeph-High crystal beings were making sounds like breaking glass. The insect-like Krell were clicking their mandibles in panic. Even the energy-based Luminar were flickering like candles in a storm. Our weapons are useless, reported Admiral Vex of the Zeph-High fleet. Every shot we fire at them just makes them stronger. The planetary defense systems are failing, added General Click of the Krell army. The people below are sending out distress signals, but we cannot help them. Thekfor stood beside Jake, his black armor gleaming under the emergency lights. The Devourers are growing larger, he observed. The fear from the planet is making them more powerful every minute. Jake watched the enemy ships expand like balloons being filled with air. Each scream of terror from the planet below added to their size and strength. The situation was hopeless by any normal measure. Time for Plan Crazy, Jake announced. Danny Rodriguez looked up from the speaker system he had been rewiring. You mean the plan where we turn a space battle into a party? That's the one, Jake confirmed. Katie Sullivan shook her head while checking her medical supplies. I still think you're all insane. Thank you, Rick Thompson called from under a control panel. I've got the music system connected to the fleet communication network. Every ship will hear what we broadcast. Jake picked up the fleet-wide communication device. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We're about to try something that has never been done before. We're going to fight the Devourers with joy instead of fear. The alien commanders looked confused. How do you fight ancient killing machines? With happiness, asked Admiral Vex. By remembering that fighting can be fun, Thekfor replied. My ancestors knew this truth. They sang war songs when they charged into battle. Jake nodded to Rick, who activated the music system. The sound of Earth's heaviest metal music began playing through every speaker in the fleet. The drums pounded like heartbeats and the guitars screamed like war cries. All human ships charge the enemy fleet, Jake ordered. Remember, we're not dying heroes today. We're having the best day of our lives. The human ships broke formation and flew straight toward the Devourer fleet. Instead of tactical precision, they moved like they were dancing to the music. The pilots were laughing and shouting over the communication channels. This is Pilot Sarah, Johnson and Fighter 7, came a voice over the radio. I always wondered what it would be like to punch a moon-sized robot in the face. Today I find out. Fighter 12 here, called another pilot. My grandmother fought in 3 wars and always said the secret was to smile while you shoot. Let's see if she was right. The Vraktar fleet watched in amazement as the humans charged toward certain death while cheering. Then something remarkable happened. Krell let out a roar that shook his ship. For the joy of battle, he shouted, and his red armor blazed with light. The Vraktar ships joined the charge, their crews remembering the warrior songs of their ancestors. They had been civilized for so long that they had forgotten the thrill of fighting for something important. "What are they doing?" asked Admiral Vex, watching the seemingly suicidal attack. "They're having fun," Lisa Hayes replied from the diplomatic ship. "Look at the Devourer fleet." The massive black ships were not growing anymore. In fact, they seemed to be shrinking slightly. The energy patterns that flowed between them were becoming unstable. "The fear-feeding system is overloading," Rick reported, reading his instruments while music pounded around him. "The Devourers can't process what they're receiving from our ships." Danny's voice came over the radio as he piloted his fighter through impossible maneuvers. "Woohoo! I just flew through a giant robot's weapon beam and it tickled." Katie was treating wounded pilots who had been hit by enemy fire, but even the injured were laughing. "This is the craziest medical situation I've ever seen," she said. "Half my patients are asking to go back out and fight some more." The other alien species watched in shock as the humans and Vraktar turned a hopeless battle into what appeared to be a dangerous game. Some of the braver alien pilots began to join the attack. "I don't understand," called pilot Zexhai of the Crystal People. "Why are you not afraid to die?" "Because we're too busy living," shouted Jake as he manually piloted his command ship between two Devourer vessels. "Rick, can you overload their fear processing systems?" "Already working on it," Rick replied, his hands flying over the controls. "If I can create a feedback loop in their energy absorption network." A massive explosion lit up space as Rick's plan worked. One of the Devourer ships simply fell apart, its ancient systems unable to handle the flood of joy and excitement coming from the human and Vraktar crews. "It's working," Lisa announced. "The other ships are destabilizing." More Devourer ships began to break apart as their fear-feeding systems overloaded. For 12 million years they had grown stronger from the terror of their victims. They had no defense against enemies who found joy in mortal danger. Thekfor's ship flew alongside Jake's command vessel. "Human Jake Morrison," the Vraktar warlord called over the radio. "My people have a saying, the best death is the one that comes while you are laughing." "Let's hope we don't have to test that today," Jake replied. The battle raged for hours, but it was unlike any battle in galactic history. Instead of desperate fighting, it became a celebration of courage. The humans in Vraktar had found something the Devourers could not steal or corrupt: the pure joy of facing impossible odds with friends beside you. When the last Devourer ship exploded into harmless fragments, the combined fleet floated in space, battered but victorious. The planet below was safe and 3 billion people would live to see another day. "How did you know that would work?" asked Admiral Vex. Jake looked at his human crew and their Vraktar allies, all of them grinning, despite their exhaustion. "Because the deadliest species in the galaxy finally remembered what it means to be alive." 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b, the Galactic Council chambers looked completely different. The old circular room with its intimidating thrones had been replaced with a more open design. Representatives from different species sat at the same level, and the atmosphere felt more like a meeting of friends than a gathering of suspicious strangers. Admiral Jake Morrison walked into the chamber wearing his dress uniform with new decorations. The most unusual one was a Vraktar honor claw made of silver and black metal. It was the first time in galactic history that such an award had been given to a non-Vraktar. Beside him walked Warlord Thekfor, whose own armor now carried human military ribbons alongside his traditional Vraktar battle marks. The sight of the galaxy's most feared predator wearing human decorations had become a symbol of the new alliance. "The Deathworld Alliance has completed its first month of operations," Jake announced to the assembly. 12 different crises have been resolved using our new approach." Commander Lisa Hayes stood at the central podium, her blonde hair now shorter in a more practical military style. "The results speak for themselves," she said, activating a holographic display. "Species that once fled from danger are now requesting human and Vraktar advisors to help them face their problems." The display showed statistics that amazed even Jake. Emergency response times had improved by 60%. Casualties during dangerous missions had dropped by half. Most surprisingly, volunteer rates for risky assignments had increased by 300%. "How is this possible?" asked Admiral Vex of the HFY, his crystal body ringing with curiosity instead of the fear it once carried. Danny Rodriguez stepped forward, still grinning the way he always did when talking about dangerous situations. We taught them that scary problems can be fun problems if you have the right attitude. And the right friends, added Katie Sullivan, who now wore both human medical insignia and Vraktar healing symbols on her uniform. Rick Thompson looked up from a device he was adjusting. The psychology is actually pretty simple. When you stop seeing danger as something that will kill you and start seeing it as something to overcome, your whole brain works differently. Kreldash, the red-armored Vraktar warrior, nodded in agreement. My young warriors now train with human instructors. They learn to laugh while fighting instead of simply surviving. Show them the academy footage, Thekfor suggested. Lisa activated another hologram that showed the new Deathworld training academy on the moon of Sanctuary Prime. The image revealed something that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago: young Vraktar and human children training together, playing games that looked like controlled chaos. In the footage, a 10-year-old human girl named Amy was teaching a young Vraktar how to climb a wall while laughing. When the Vraktar child fell, instead of becoming upset, he got up and tried again while both children giggled. The next generation is learning courage from birth, explained Dr. Helen Martinez, the Academy's head instructor. They see danger as a puzzle to solve rather than a monster to fear. General Click of the Krell spoke up, his insect-like voice carrying a note of wonder. My own soldiers have requested this training. They say it makes them feel alive instead of just dutiful. The Yao. Changes go deeper than military applications, Lisa continued. Scientists are taking bigger risks in their research. Engineers are building things they never thought possible. Artists are creating works that express joy instead of just beauty. Jake walked to the center of the chamber. 6 months ago, humanity was alone in the universe. We discovered that we lived in a galaxy full of civilizations that had forgotten how to be brave. Today, we're teaching each other to remember. But why trust humans? Asked Captain Luminex of the energy-based Luminar. What makes your species special? Thegfor answered before Jake could speak. They are not special because they are stronger or smarter. They are special because they never forgot that life is meant to be lived, not just endured. When humans see a mountain, they want to climb it, Grekmore added. When they see an ocean, they want to cross it. When they see a problem, they want to solve it. And they do all of this while smiling. Most importantly, Thekfor continued, they taught us that we could smile too. For generations, my people had forgotten the warrior's joy. Humans reminded us that fighting for something good can be the best feeling in the universe. Danny raised his hand. Plus, we throw really good parties after dangerous missions. The chamber filled with what could only be described as laughter, though it came from species that expressed humor in very different ways. The HFY made musical chiming, sounds the Krell clicked their mandibles rhythmically, and the Luminar flickered in patterns of light. The old galaxy was ruled by fear, Jake said, looking around at the representatives. Species stayed apart because they were afraid of each other. They avoided risks because they were afraid of failure. They built walls because they were afraid of the unknown. The new galaxy will be different, Thekfor added. We will explore together, fight together, and celebrate together. We will turn our fears into adventures. Katie stepped forward with a medical report. The health benefits alone are remarkable. Species that practice Deathworld protocol show improved mental health, stronger immune systems, and longer lifespans. Because happiness is the best medicine, Rick said, and courage is the best exercise. Lisa activated one final hologram showing a star map of the galaxy. 67 species have now joined the Deathworld Alliance. We're not conquering worlds or forcing our ways on others. We're simply showing them that life can be an adventure instead of a burden. The Vraktar spent 3,000 years looking for worthy allies, Thekfor said, his deep voice carrying pride and affection. We found them in the most unlikely place, a species that thinks falling out of trees is fun and considers natural disasters to be exciting weather. Jake grinned. And we found our perfect partners and warriors who think a good day ends with honorable scars and stories worth telling. So what happens next? Asked Admiral Vex. Next, we explore the galaxy together, Jake replied. We'll face whatever comes with courage, laughter, and friends beside us. Because that's what Deathworlders do. We turn survival into an art form. And we teach others to paint with the same brush, Thek4 concluded. As the assembly ended, Jake watched the representatives from different species talking and laughing together. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. The deadliest creatures in space were not the ones with the biggest weapons or the strongest armor. They were the ones who had turned fear into fun and made courage contagious. The age of hiding from danger was over. The age of dancing with it had begun.